Hello, this is Kelly Jones. I am going to respond in this video to video number 2 of Jess Bolin. It's where she uses the Bushman and Haas textbook to talk about how she's going to teach the Shades of Gray, Between Shades of Gray text. One thing you started out with, Jess, that I really thought was important, you were talking about what it means for students to become emotionally invested in a text, and that's going to be connected to what kind of characters portrayed in the text. I really like that you said it was so important to help them understand that the character is a dynamic character, not a character who's static, not one who doesn't evolve. I'm such a huge Breaking Bad fan, and I always interested in reading the reviews. A lot of people felt that the reason for Breaking Bad's critical success had a lot to do with the fact that Vince Gilligan and his writing team allowed Walter White to evolve as a character. He did not stay predictable. And I think you're making a great point. If the character is not dynamic, students are not going to be emotionally invested. And for me, out of the two things you said, important things, dynamic and relatable, I'd probably say dynamic is even more important in a way than relatable. You said those were two important elements for teaching. I totally agree. Your other one, pointing out that the character is relatable and that helps them make the connection, absolutely. I think there's one level of reading when a student reads about a character in a fantasy novel, and that genre is so popular now. But and even dystopian stuff, like we read in Feed and Maze Runner, they might think, okay, this person is a dynamic character. Certainly, they're exciting, they're changing, they're growing, they're evolving. It's going to be hard for them to look at the character in the same way if they can't ever imagine themselves trying to run through a maze or trying to save the world or something like that. So, good point so far. I do like how you said that the first-person point of view is somewhat limiting, but in spite of the limits that a first-person point of view puts on the text, it does do a lot to make more of a personal connection. And again, that's talking about relatability, and that's huge. One thing, when you were talking about how you would teach this, one thing that made me think of, you were talking about the fact that Lena mentions her art and describes her art, and it plays such a huge part for positive or negative. You know, it kind of can get her into trouble. At the beginning, her dad realizes she's made a cartoon of Stalin, I think it was, and he's like, oh my God, if somebody were to catch, if somebody were to get this, it could, be curtains for you. But then there are also ways that it benefits her, like when they need someone to draw maps, or when they need somebody to make a portrait, to draw a portrait of the evil bad guy who's kind of running the camp. I thought it was interesting that you pointed out that we get all kinds of descriptions about the art, but we don't see the art. And since I did my my vlogs on Alexei, and I talked about his art, it made me kind of think of how you could handle something where there's no picture of the art, there's just a talk about it. Kind of made me think, if I were teaching Alexei, I could pose some questions to my students. I might think about asking them why Alexei never includes any of his family members in artwork. The stuff that he includes tends to be, and the serious artwork, I should say, the penciled portraits, they're all people who are outside of his family circle. I could toss that out, and instead of just pointing this out, go a step beyond with my students and say, well, why do you suppose that's not there? What reasons can you find in the text that might support a decision not to include that? Something else that I was thinking about as I was listening to your video, I could also ask, let's look at those drawings that we do have in Alexei. What are some things that you might change? What are some things that we look at the drawings we see? What are some changes that you might want to make? And tell me why. What do you think? How would the impact change if we change some parts of the drawings? Another interesting thing to think about when you're talking about drawings and how they're used, either in the descriptions of them or in representations of the drawings themselves, I got to thinking about the symbols in the drawings. Of course, you could do this with anything, but if you looked at Alexei, like I did, for example, you might even want to encourage students to tackle some of the really difficult topics. He presents some really serious topics, like the death of his sister when she burned in the trailer, the rampant situation of alcoholism, He does these still in a cartoon form, so he's using some dark humor there. But you could look at those even further and say, what is this symbolic of? What are some symbols we see in these? I talked about alcoholism, the death of his sister. Maybe you could even think of something as abstract as the death of his sister's dream. You know, she's got this dream Mr. P tells him about being a romance novelist. Her dream dies, so perhaps there is somewhere to a place to explore with that. So anyway, good stuff. I like that the central character's main mode of expression is art, and the fact that you're pointing out it's not mentioned there, and what do you make of that? Good stuff, good comments as always. Until next time.